Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of The Bottom Line on Air. My name is Claire Sullivan, and I will be your host. Each week, we will explore our campus's current events, breaking news stories, and we are using this space to dig deeper and to elevate discourse and understanding, and to put faces to names on the FSU campus. Tonight, we are joined by Dr. MacKenzie LaMont and Dr. Scott Reeker from the Department of Music to talk about their upcoming concert. Next, we will speak with former Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Tom Bowling, who is leading a global civic literacy and leadership program on campus, and student Jasmine Akarolo, who recently founded a chapter of the Center for Economic and Social Justice. Our first guests tonight are Drs. MacKenzie LaMont and Scott Reeker from the Department of Music. Dr. LaMont directs the percussion ensemble, and Dr. Reeker directs the chamber singers, university choral, and the Troubadours tenor bass choir. Welcome, gentlemen, to our show. We are excited to learn about this upcoming performance. This is your first joint performance between the percussion ensemble and the choral artists this semester. So what inspired you guys to give this arrangement a try?
It runs in my mind that we both wanted the concert date. And the best way to accommodate that, there's some great music for percussion and choir, is why not give the students the opportunity to experience it, and then we both also get the concert date. Is that how you remember it, Mac?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then there was a pretty brief discussion of the pieces, and we pretty quickly had the two main pieces pinned down.
So who will be your guest performers, and what can we expect from their performances?
So I know the guests listed are actually just members of the percussion ensemble who just aren't enrolled in the course. So it's a couple of current students and then one alumni who are just performing with the group.
And with the choirs as well, we have some community members that we didn't list on the poster, but they perform with the group. And then Dr. Jungen, our collaborative pianist, is going to be featured very strongly in this event. And we have a singer, a countertenor, who is a student here, who will be singing a significant solo in the chamber singers. So that's a pretty cool opportunity.
It does sound cool. Dr. LaMont, can you tell us about your composition of the Lord's Prayer?
Sure. So this is actually a piece I wrote 10 years ago. It's hard to believe, back in 2011. And so the piece is just sort of designed to give a few different reactions to just sort of religion as a whole, specifically Christianity in this case. But you can almost look at it as a programmatic story of a group of people trying to say the Our Father prayer. And they keep getting interrupted, and various religious texts in different languages, Latin, Arabic, Hebrew, come into play to sort of help them get back on track.
Dr. Reiker, could you please tell us about Bibel's composition of Ave Maria and how you worked with your performers to prepare for this?
Sure. This is a really interesting piece because it was composed originally for a firefighters choir in Bavaria, and it was written for 7 vocal parts, 7 independent vocal parts happening at the same time. And it would have not have seen the light of day probably outside of Bavaria until a group called Chanticleer recorded it, and it became this darling composition of the choral repertoire. And so consequently, we've split the ensemble into, most of the folks are working on the predominantly soprano, alto, tenor, bass part, and then we have 3 soloists who are singing the last 3 parts as sort of a trio against the rest of the choir. And it's one of the most remarkable parts about this is that even though the 2 parts are pretty independent of each other, musically they fit together, they build off each other, and it creates this wonderful unity instead of sounding like 2 things happening at the same time.
If anybody wants to, in the future, get involved with participating in these performances, how can they do that?
I'm really glad you asked that. It's a wonderful thing here at Frostburg State, where any student, doesn't matter your major, your skill level, your past experience, you can be involved in some musical ensemble here. Some of the ensembles have audition requirements and others don't. Mac and I think, are good examples of people who our job is to teach. And so if people come to us at whatever skill level, we will teach and we'll make you better. And you're going to have a good experience with what we have. And these ensembles are open to students, they're open to faculty, they're open to staff, and with appropriate COVID safety measures, they're open to members of the community as well. This is sort of our outreach and our presence in the community.
How have you been able to make the various performances accessible to audiences outside of the university during the COVID pandemic, if you don't mind talking about that?
We've done everything possible to keep our students and the public safe during the pandemic. We've had a great collaboration with the Mass Communications Department. Both Dr. Keith Terry and Melanie Lombardi have been extremely helpful in helping us suddenly live stream our concerts, which is something we had only done a few times via Facebook Live, and now we're using YouTube. So you can find all of our concerts on YouTube at the Frostburg Music Department YouTube page. And then we are allowed to have 50 members of the FSU community at each of our concerts, and it has been great to have, you know, a live audience back in our hall when, for a portion of last semester, due to the government guidelines, we weren't allowed to do so. So we've put in a lot of hours to, make sure that our productions are high quality and they're going out to as many people as possible.
And I think it's important to recognize the mass communications collaboration has been terrific, but without Dr. Lamont, and he's just gone above and beyond, working all kinds of crazy hours to discover new technologies, new programs, new ways to interface with the music that we're doing, ways to mic it. We've got new technology in the hall, and we can lay that at his feet that, this wouldn't have happened without his driving force behind it. And so we're really lucky and appreciative.
Finally, could you please tell the audience how they may watch the performance and if they are able to attend in person?
So if people go to www.frostburg.edu/concerts, it's concerts plural, they'll be able to get a link to the concert, as well as a link to the Facebook or to the YouTube page that has all of our recordings and our archives on it. And they can watch live at any time, when it's being broadcast, or check out the archive afterwards.
Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. This is the final performance of the spring semester for the Department of Music. We hope you have a great show, and we look forward to the performances starting again during the fall 2021 semester. Our next guest is Vice President for Student Affairs Emeritus, Dr. Tom Bowling, who has stayed active since his retirement with launching a global civic literacy program at Frostburg State University. One of only 10 schools across the country with such a program, the first class of global civic leaders have recently started their work, and we are delighted to have Dr. Bowling here to tell us more. Welcome to the Bottom Line on Air, Dr. Bowling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for reaching out to me, and it's particularly appropriate that we're filming this on Earth Day.
So to get started, what is the Global Civic Literacy Project? How did you become involved, and what are the goals of the program?
Sure. So the American Association of State Colleges and Universities is partnering with the Council on Foreign Affairs. And they launched this initially back in the fall of 2019. So it was shortly after I retired that I became aware that they were looking for institutions to apply to be part of this network. One of the things that intrigued me was that they were asking specifically for someone from student affairs, which is what my background is, and someone from the faculty to serve as co-chairs. So I contacted Bill Mandicott, Assistant Vice President for Student and Community Involvement, and Dr. Joan Andorfer in Political Science, who has coordinated our International Studies major and has continued to be very much involved with the Model OAS and Model UN programs. And I thought they would work well together. So I asked them if they would join me in this adventure. And we've since gotten others involved, but it was really an email from ASCU that put this on my radar. And it's something that I've had an interest in for a long time. When you think about arguably the two greatest challenges that are facing our country today, they're also facing our globe in terms of the pandemic and climate change. And if we don't work collectively, collaboratively with other countries to address those issues, those problems, we cannot make progress on our own. And so the idea that we need students who want to reach out to other countries and have the interest and the capacity to do so.
So what do you think this opportunity offers students? Meaning outside of exposure to new material, what is the new framework or lens that students will be given?
Well, we want to first give students an opportunity to investigate the world beyond their immediate environment. And we've structured some activities that will enable them to do that. And particularly as Americans, we can become very insular. We don't need to learn another language. And I'm not suggesting that anyone should not learn another language, but it's not the necessity that it is in other countries because English is so widely understood. Mm-hmm. And ironically, that puts us at a somewhat disadvantage because learning another language gives you insight into their perspectives of the world as you go through that process. We also want to communicate to students and give them the skills for them to be bridge builders. And it's a time to bridge across differences, whether those differences are geographic or linguistic or cultural, political. We need individuals who can communicate with those whose life experiences are very different from their own. And then we want students to take action. And so a project of some sort is going to be an essential part of this. Another feature that I've just been delighted about, a week ago yesterday, we had there have been 25 students selected as global civic leaders. And almost all of them were able to join a call with Justin Van Fleet, a Frostburg graduate, an alum. He was in the class of 2002. I had the privilege of having him in an honors sociology class, and Bill Mandicott taught him in a leadership class that he taught, and then Dr. Andorfer had him in several of her classes. So there's a critical mass of individuals on the steering committee that know him well. Justin is now president of an organization called Their World, and it has an ambitious goal. It is to create a brighter future for every child on the planet through education. And they are addressing a global crisis in education right now. Students aren't going to school because of and this was pre-pandemic, they weren't going to school because of wars, or they were climate refugees. Many girls don't go to school for cultural reasons. And so Their World has been extremely successful in garnering support from corporations, and they've also challenged governments to put at least 5% of their total budget into early childhood education, knowing that 90% of a person's brain is formed in the first 5 years of life. So that's a high priority. Justin has taught or has spoken at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. So he has been on the world stage and is making a difference in the world. Just since that call, he has reached an agreement with Nigeria to have them increase the investment that they're making in early childhood education. So his story was, as you can imagine, very inspiring to the students. And I think they particularly appreciated knowing that someone who graduated from Frostburg, who sat in the same seats they are, is making this kind of difference.
That's wonderful. Among your first 25 students, what have the early reactions to the curriculum been so far?
Well, we've just gotten started. So their reaction to Justin's remarks were extremely positive. And we're having them identify a project that we're not assigning projects. We're asking them to come up with something that they will own, that and it could be some collective projects. So it could be small groups or it could be individual projects. The important thing is that they identify something where they want to make a difference. And we're here to mentor, to guide, to suggest resources. So on the growing Microsoft Teams platform, we're putting up all kinds of resources. I know Kara Rogers Thomas provided links to films that are part of a virtual film festival to observe Earth Day. We've also put up links to 3 films, 3 documentaries that Frostburg has done in collaboration with Mike Snyder, a film director who is from Frostburg, but is independent of the university. Because we think that looking not just at articles, not just at books, but also looking at film can be a powerful way for someone to fully understand an issue, or at least have an introduction to an issue that they want to learn more about. So the reaction to, I'm sorry, the initial reaction to some of those films has also been very positive. We had a breakout session last night with about half of the group. We've got another one tonight. And they're kind of organizing themselves around some big topics where they want to make a difference: social justice, global poverty, education, and then the environment.
Wow, it really sounds like there's a lot of exciting things happening. So following this inaugural year, what are your hopes for the future of global civic literacy on our campus?
Well, we would like this effort to be institutionalized. The university received a very, very modest grant from ASCU to support this first year of the program, and we're certainly taking advantage of that. But we recognize that while the mission of Frostburg State University indicates that we will prepare leaders to meet the challenges of an increasingly complex and global society, and certainly there are a number of courses that do that, we really want to embed the resources that we are developing for this pilot to be available to all students. And for already some instructors have been using the World 101 curriculum that has been made available to us through the Council for Foreign Relations. And so you've seen some impact on individual classrooms already, but we would certainly like that to continue, and perhaps in some new iteration of the general education program have a course that features a number of the goals of this program.
That sounds, again, extremely exciting. It sounds like there's a very bright future ahead. Dr. Bowling, it has been a pleasure to hear about this exciting opportunity for students, especially considering that FSU is among only 10 schools in the country selected to participate in the Global Civic Literacy Program. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Claire.
Our final guest this evening is Jasmine Akarolo, an SGA Senator and Strutter Dance team member who recently started FSU's chapter of the Center for Economic and Social Justice. We are thrilled to hear about this new initiative on campus, so thank you for being here, Jasmine.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you guys today.
Absolutely. So the Center for Economic and Social Justice might be new to some of the viewers. So what can you tell us about the group's mission and why you felt Frostburg State needed a chapter on campus?
So the Center for Economic and Social Justice, we focused on both issues, but our main focus right now is economic justice, because we feel it is under the umbrella of social justice. Social justice is such a huge, broad topic that we kind of find it necessary to focus on the economic side of things, because we find it important that the way of living in America is so economic focused, but mainly the government wants us to have money through them and be handed out money through them when we really don't get a chance to build our own capital. So that's what we really focused on. We focused on how can everybody have equal opportunity, equal access through capital ownership. And so why I felt it was important to bring CESJ to Frostburg's campus, for one, it helps the both of us. This is the first ever college university chapter of the Center for Economic and Social Justice. So we are kind of taking it as a pilot chapter, as you would say. And so, but what we need is the younger population. We need Frostburgs to kind of spread the message a little bit more. In Frostburg, I feel that we needed an action pushing org on campus, because we have things going up to the Senate, going up to governors and things like that. So if we can get Frostburg State involved before, they graduate and go into this new world of understanding what money is and what justice is, if we could just get that into these college students' minds, that would really, really help us and help them push the mission a little bit more.
Jasmine, what made you want to get involved with this type of activism in education, and why do you think it's important for other students to also be involved?
Great question. So, during 2020, it was a long, hard, very thoughtful year. It really made us sit back and think for ourselves, by ourselves. And especially during the climate of the year, it was very hard to kind of try to place where I fit in the activism role. I'm not a person to be on the front lines. I can't be out there, right? So I needed to find a way to, somebody told me that really stuck with me a couple years ago, not everybody is on the same line in terms of activism or just fighting for what's right. And so that stuck with me, and I knew I needed to find something that but makes policy changes and makes make things change. So I was searching and I found volunteerism in the Center for Economic and Social Justice. And I really loved their mission, because it's like we're not only focusing on the broad spectrum of social justice, like I was just previously saying, but we are focusing on how can you make it in this world through capital ownership? How do we build that capital ownership? How do we call out the systems for their policies that aren't written how they need to be written, if that makes sense? So Center for Economic Justice, we have this thing called the Economic Democracy Act, which we are actually working to get passed right now in the Senate in St. Louis right now. But yeah, so I just found that they had a really great mission, and I was like, I can really create change with this, and bringing it to a college campus who has younger people. We need people power in general. The only way to push things is if you have people power, if you have people behind you. And so I definitely felt it necessary to try and get it here, and if we can get it to more people, more universities, and more, even if we can get it in curriculums, that's what we're trying to do. But we have to start small. And so I felt it was necessary to at least put this step down. So if somebody can come behind me and keep it going, that would be amazing.
There are a few principles that the Center for Economic and Social Justice advocates for relative to economic policy, including participation, distribution, and harmony. Of these ideas, which one is the most inspiring to you?
I would have to say harmony is the most inspiring to me, because though participation and distribution are very, very important, you cannot work if you are not a harmonious, well-oiled engine. You must be able to be on the same page with everybody, with everything that you're doing. You can have a large group of people wanting to fight for the mission and wanting to push forth what we are all pushing forth. But if they are looking at the mission from 10,000 different perspectives, then you won't effectively push it through. So I definitely think being harmonious with the people around you and what you're specifically doing, that's the most inspiring to me.
I love that answer. So thinking towards next school year, how can students get involved with our campus chapter of the Center for Economic and Social Justice? And what actions and events are you planning on campus?
So for this semester, at least, we actually are just now, this is April 23rd will be our last event of our 3-part series, What is Money, Justice, and Power? So this is our first kickoff event series, so we're just finishing that up. But we will be having our poetry slam coming up at the end of this semester. And in terms of for the upcoming semester and things like that, I am looking for board positions. I do not have a full board right now. So we will be putting out board elections coming up at the end of the semester. And next year, we have more creative things that we are looking to plan. We have forums with different people. We have a few senators to speak to, as well as a few board members from the headquarters of Center for Economic and Social Justice to speak to us as well. So we have a lot of information that we want to push out to the student body. And we will be doing it through conversation, through activity, through art. And we are looking for any creative way, any creative person that wants to come along and just help us push through our mission. So yeah.
I think that's fantastic. I never would have considered like the combination of like economics and a poetry slam, or just like economic education and like creativity in general. That's fantastic. Jasmine, it has been a pleasure to chat with you this evening about the work that you are doing to kickstart a chapter of the CESJ on FSU's campus. We look forward to watching how the group spurs action next school year. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We want to thank our guests, Drs. MacKenzie LaMont and Scott Reeker, Dr. Tom Bowling, and Jasmine Akarolo. Next week's episode will feature outgoing SGA President Noah DeMichael offering his reflections on an unusual year, Jenica Braxton from the Office for Student Affairs to talk about the highs and lows of diversity initiatives this year, and finally, Robert Cooper, lovingly called Coop, who will give us some reasons to look forward to next year. Tune in next Wednesday, May 5th at 8 p.m. for the final episode of The Bottom Line on Air for the spring 2021 semester. This show is a collaboration between FSU TV3 and The Bottom Line. To stay connected with us, you can find The Bottom Line at thebottomlinenews.com and on Facebook and Twitter. FSU TV3 can also be found on social media and at frostburg.edu/FSU TV3. Thank you for joining us. My name is Claire Sullivan, and this has been The Bottom Line on Air. Good night.